Hey everyone, how you doing? It's a cloudy fall day in Pittsburgh, and I'm feeling a little contemplative and thought maybe I'll do something a little different today. Make this channel a little bit more personal and tell you all about my story. I'm not very good at talking about myself, so this is probably more for me than you guys. This is a good exposure for me to figure out how to tell my story and, tell it to myself as well as others. Kind of fits into that ICVT thing of knowing your real self. But where do I start? What do I know about myself? Well, I know I've had my share of struggles. I was definitely that kid that was just really quiet and shy growing up. Um, didn't really develop the social skills that you need to function in those critical grades of like middle school and early high school. And so experienced a lot of difficulties, had a lot of really bad social anxiety. And that made it really hard to function. It made it hard to talk to people and to make friends. And when you have really bad social anxiety, you're kind of just sleepwalking through life a little bit. You're just trying to get through the current interaction as quickly as possible. And so it's, you miss a lot of experiences in life. There's a lot of years that kind of pass you by. And, so that was a lot of my experience when I was younger. I had an amazing family, 2 amazing brothers that I'm still close with, and wonderful, loving mom, and incredible, devoted father. They both worked so hard for us to give us the life that they wanted us to have. And at the same time, just had that struggle through much of middle school and high school. And I think things turned around a little bit for me when I joined the football team. This was Pennsylvania high school we're talking here, and high school football is huge. And our school never had a football team. And so my sophomore year, we started the first football team ever at Delaware Valley High School in northeastern Pennsylvania. And man, there was just a bunch of scrawny kids throwing on these uniforms, these brand new, shiny white uniforms, stepping onto the field with these huge kids from small town Pennsylvania. And we pretty much got destroyed every game. I think there was one game against Wallenpaupack. We lost 72-0 or something like that. That was a rough one. But, we stuck together. I learned a lot through that experience. We really stuck together, and I developed these friendships, and we kept our heads up high and stayed positive. And if I remember correctly, I don't think we ever won a game in 3 years. That's how tough it is to start a football team. And, so I was in the football team sophomore, junior, senior year. And somehow just loved it too. It was just a great experience just having those friendships. And that really got me through that period in my life. I think there was a Facebook post like a few years back too from someone still connected to my high school who said that we, Delaware Valley, beat Wallenpaupack 73-0. So it was like the ultimate revenge. That was really cool. But, that was a big part of my life at that point. And then I went off to college, and that's probably where I really started to develop the confidence and find myself. And, I think college is a really good thing for some people. I really needed it. It was really good for me. It helped me develop as a person and find out who I am in this crazy modern world that we live in. Of course, it was cheaper back then, and for a lot of people, college actually may not be the best thing. I'm a firm believer that there are careers out there where you don't need a college degree, and these days, a lot of those are making more than people with degrees. So that could be a great path for a lot of people. For me, college was so great. So, for people that feel like they need that experience to develop themselves, I'm a huge proponent of going to college. But, you know, I had a great experience. Penn State, Happy Valley in Pennsylvania. It's a great place to live for 4.5 years in my case, I think it was. I studied abroad. I did a lot of kind of volunteer things like Habitat for Humanity. I got really into literature. I got a degree in comparative literature. And, you know, overall, it was an awesome, awesome experience. And met my future wife at Penn State. And I'd say, like, of all my values, love is way up there. For whatever reason, that was always like one of the most important things to me, to find a partner and to develop a really close partnership. And so, you know, my wife and I, you know, it's just been an awesome story. We are, you know, just, you know, fully committed and in love, and it's all I could have ever wanted in life. It literally was the most important thing to me, finding that person. And so I guess you could say I'm old fashioned. I still believe in love. Sorry, guys. Um, but you know, it gives my life meaning, that, you know, my marriage, my partnership with my wife, and you know, just getting closer and deeper over time. It's not a straight line, right? Just like in therapy, progress is up and down, but it's been a beautiful experience just developing our relationship, and now having two kids. And so I'd say love and family, you know, have always been important to me. And I found that in college. I got really lucky in that way. So as far as, you know, one of the, what really became the most significant point in my life as far as my mental health goes is, not long after college, I actually had a spontaneous pneumothorax. That's basically when your lung collapses all by itself. And so I have actually had this feeling in my body a couple times before. I had this intense, sharp pain that went through my chest into my back. And it happened a couple times. It actually happened when I was studying abroad in Spain a couple times. It was kind of freaky. But then it would just like pass. And so I didn't, you know, I just didn't know what it was. But it would last like 12 to 24 hours or something like that. And then the pain went away a couple times. And so this happened to me again, you know, after college when I was living in Philadelphia. I woke up and I just, you know, was having that pain in my chest, and it was this totally freaky experience. My wife's father happened to be in town, and he was a physician, and wonderful man, passed away recently, and loved him dearly. But he, you know, one of the experiences we had together was he was there when I had this collapsed lung, and we all went to the hospital together. My wife, her parents, and we're in the waiting room, and you know, I'm basically having this pain in my chest. I woke up with this pain in my chest, and now I'm in the waiting room, and you know, it keeps getting worse. Like I literally am having trouble talking. Like it hurts to laugh. And my father-in-law went up to that triage nurse and said, "Hey, get this guy in. There's something wrong here." So they wheel me into the ER and take some X-rays. And when those X-rays are done, there's a group. I see them in the hospital, a group of like 5 or 10 people literally making their way towards me. And the doctor informs me, you know, that I've got a collapsed lung. You know, I'd felt this feeling before, but I had no clue this was even something that could happen to you. And so I've got this collapsed lung. I've got this tension pneumothorax, which, if it keeps getting worse, is going to close up my airway. And so they stick a huge needle in my chest to let all the air out of my chest. And this big group of people was all these residents and students who were like, "Oh my God, we get to see a tension pneumothorax." So I became the lesson for the day. And so then they, you know, hook me up to this chest tube, which is a big thing. They put a tube between your ribs and then hook it up to suction. And then they're supposed to suck your lung back against the chest wall, and that's supposed to, hold it in place till the hole in your lung, the little weakness, heals. And so I got that. I got a chest tube, and then I got put in a room, and day after day it wasn't working. I wasn't healing. I still needed the chest tube. So finally they do a surgery, and they do this thing where they basically affix your lung to the chest wall. They kind of rough up the outside of it, and then it heals and fuses with your chest wall so it can't collapse anymore. So they do this crazy surgery to me. And then they also find out I have a staph infection. And so that's why the chest tube wasn't working. That's why I wasn't healing. And so that gets done. The surgery gets done. They clean out the infection. They put me on antibiotics. And, I'm in the hospital for a few more days. It's miserable. I mean, I'm literally 24 years old. And out of nowhere, this happens. Now, of course, I'm a 24-year-old young man, so I'm ignoring it. I'm fine. I'll get through this. We're very resilient at that age, but maybe at a cost sometimes because you don't pay attention to the significance of things and what's happening to you. You can't recognize the significance of things. But, that happened to me, and I got let out. And so, I'm basically this walking wounded guy walking around Philly, in the days after the surgery. I was in a creative writing master's program at the time. I thought I was going to be a writer at the time. I've tried a lot of different ideas for careers, and that was one of them. I still, everything I've ever done, I've always used it. All those writing skills have come in handy for me in life, but that's a different topic. Back to me walking around with this fused lung. I basically am in incredible pain. It hurts to move. And I'm also feeling like I can't breathe. I can't get enough air. And so it's a crazy thing that's going on with me. So I think there was probably a few more doctor's visits. I might have even went to an ER at one point because I felt like I was having pains or couldn't breathe. And very typical of anybody that's ever had this done. You end up with all these sensations because you have this crazy healing thing going on in your chest, and there's all this scar tissue forming. And so, all kinds of sensations, it's with your breathing. And so, as you can imagine, the pain, the fear of not being able to breathe, all this stuff is just hugely triggering of anxiety. So, I have, ever since then, I'm 49 now. That was when I was 24. I've had a little bit higher baseline anxiety probably ever since. The nervous system is just a little overactive. That's just who I am, right? That's just my baseline. There's partly nothing I can do about that. It's very traumatic. And when it involves breathing, I've learned so much about breathing. And breathing is what activates your parasympathetic nervous system. When you're doing diaphragmatic breathing, you're literally activating the part of your body that keeps you calm. And, when you're having breathing difficulties, maybe you're not calming down your nervous system as much. And so, one thing I found out during this time was there's just a lot of scar tissue along my diaphragm. And, they always made, doctors, they find things, they see things on x-rays, and it's always like, but, no big deal. You're fine. So I always felt like I had these breathing difficulties. And in hindsight, I think I do have a lot of scar tissue that made it hard to breathe. I also think I had a lot of pre-existing anxiety too. And in general, had a really bad reaction to having this event and this surgery. I just really tensed up after it. And what ended up happening is I developed this really dysfunctional breathing. I started breathing with all these muscles that you're not supposed to use all the time. if you're running a marathon, you might activate these muscles, but it's like a muscle that kind of comes down here and goes to the rib cage. There's, back and the shoulder blade and the shoulder. There's so many things. And I just, without even realizing it, started keeping these things tight at all times. And then I was breathing with my neck and my shoulder and not breathing so much with my diaphragm. And, I didn't really have anyone to help me with that at the time. This is one of the difficulties with medicine. It's not like I blame medicine necessarily. Everybody's trying as hard as they can. And there's so much information and so many different issues that people come up with. Like, how many people out there are going to know what to do with someone who had this surgery and has anxiety and is holding their shoulder tight and is not breathing enough with their diaphragm? That's a very specific thing, and I never found a person that caught that for me and knew that. And so I just went on over the years and then over the decades, breathing in this very dysfunctional way. And I developed all this chronic pain. I developed all kinds of symptoms, like my face would just be like feeling like it was on fire all the time. And, even things like metallic tastes in my mouth and little, suddenly my eye is watering more than it should, just all kinds of weird things all the time. And it's a weird thing to be living like that because, it's made, it's like I'm suddenly so aware of my body. I've got a great integrative medicine provider right now who had a great quote the other day. He said, a healthy body is something you don't feel. A healthy body is something you don't notice. And so after this, it was like, I noticed everything. Now we could talk about OCD, right? Where you start really paying attention and hyper focusing on your body and noticing normal sensations and creating normal sensations. I don't want to cross over into that territory. That's an issue we work on with OCD. But, in my case, there was actually this really actually overwhelming, significant thing going on with my body that was undeniable. This wasn't like I was focusing on a part of my body and creating sensations or anything like that. I was struggling with a real health issue. So I wasn't having like an OCD version of health anxiety. I was having like, anxiety and panic maybe related to a health condition. And, but I just pushed through it, for whatever reason. That's the way I dealt with my problems. I just pushed through it, ignored it, went on. There's some strengths in that approach. I ended up figuring out my career. I ended up getting a master's in social work after trying some different things. And becoming a therapist. And I've found this, amazing career for myself. I love what I do. I feel very lucky every day to be a therapist. I've met just amazing people. I've learned so much. And, I just feel very lucky to be a therapist. But at the same time, throughout the whole process, throughout the last, 25 years or so, I was just constantly not breathing correctly. And things got tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And, to the point that like my rib cage was kind of pulled up on the right side and my shoulder was rolled over and all this, like, I was just stuck in a bad position and stuck in a body that was constantly in pain that I constantly had to be aware of. Now that mixed with my earlier social anxiety has been difficult. That's what happens is social events can be a trigger for me, so that gets my anxiety up as is. And then I've got this whole part of my body that tightens up and makes me really uncomfortable and gives me more and more pain the tighter it gets. And so, that's been the thing to cope with in my life is how do I manage the fact that socializing sometimes gets hard for me? Because it's so important in life, right? But, even like, holidays or, parties or going to a concert with friends, whatever it might be, it's always like, oh, I got to kind of get ready for this, unfortunately. And so, that's been my big challenge in life. If I envy the people that can just kind of, without worry, just hang out with people and talk. And it's, for me, it's like, here's my body getting tighter. Here's me paying more and more attention to myself and my body while I want to be, connecting with people. So it's probably, that's been the biggest challenge in my life. Now, all that being said, probably with this issue, there's probably about 10 years of it getting worse and then 10 years of it getting better, I'd say. It's been gradually getting better. And recently I'm connected with a really good PT, and I'm connected with a really good integrative medicine person. And it's the right time for me. I've really reduced all this stress in my life. I was doing too much just to block out the pain. I literally would work all the time. I was a co-owner of a group practice, and I would just be nonstop working morning to night. And it was just honestly just to block out the pain. So I had to make some changes with reducing my stress, and I feel very privileged to be able to make decisions in that area. I know a lot of people can't, but I've gotten myself with a private practice where I'm a very manageable level of stress, and have some great providers, and have this YouTube channel as an outlet, which I love. This is a great way for me to connect with other people. The internet, social media, and all that kind of stuff gets a bad rap, right? And rightly so. There's a lot of really awful things. There's no therapist out there that does not know the evils of social media. I happen to love YouTube, though, for whatever reason. It's like the democratization of ideas and information, and as long as you're, looking for the right things, you'll find just amazing free resources to learn things in life. And now I like kind of being a part of it and creating videos and sharing information with people. I love sharing ICVT with people, and I love getting that connection to others through this channel. And so that's a little bit about me. That's where I am in life right now. Whether anybody's still listening, I don't know. This is probably more for me than you all, but I appreciate it if anyone did listen. And I look forward to just continuing to share concepts with you, grow this channel, and hopefully add a little bit of a personal touch to it so you guys can know a little bit about who I am. All right. All that said, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of my channel and supporting it. And until next time, everyone, trust yourselves. Take care.